everyone, and welcome to our Spouse Link Live. Thank you for joining me today. These Spouse Link Lives are designed for military spouses thinking about military retirement, experiencing military retirement, or have crossed over into retirement. It's also for your veteran service member, but we really try and tailor the information for the spouse that's supporting their service member. So I'd love for you, if you're listening right now, feel free to tell me where you're joining us from. And if you're doing the replay, pop in where you came from or how you heard about us, what part of the world you're living in. And then please feel free to comment and share information as we go along. We really love the interaction. And Sarah, our guest today, is here to kind of support any questions that you might have. So just to tell you a tiny little bit about myself, my name is Anna Larson. My day job, I'm a copywriter, digital marketer. I'm a homeschool mom. And about 8 months ago, my military spouse retired out of active duty. And that process was a very difficult transition for our family. It made me realize how little information is really out there for the spouse in terms of understanding what that process is, what it means for the family. And so I started to look for answers, and that led me to Spouse Link and the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, also known as AFMA. And now I get to support military spouses that are going through that retirement and transition process with resources, information, and just building a community of support where they can go for some of those answers. So again, thank you for joining me today. So today we are talking about budgeting. I know, budgeting, right? It feels like kind of a conversation not everyone's really excited to have. But I do have a question. Do you have a long-term budget already created? We're not talking about like budget for like the next 6 months or the next year. We're talking about 20 to 30 years out. And this is for following your military retirement or transition. So my guest today, Sarah Bumgardner, and I are going to talk about what it takes to be money smart and budget smart as a military family that's going through that transition. So this is the second in our military finance live stream series. And I'm going to introduce my guest and bring her on because nobody wants to hear me just chitter chatter all by myself. And we've had Sarah on a couple of times. So let me pull up her bio really quick. Instead of doing just this normal bio, which I've already done before, I'm just going to tell you four interesting things about Sarah. I asked her offline. I'm like, tell me 4 interesting things about you that's not in your bio. So she said, as dorky as it sounds, she loves to clean and organize. That's number 1. Number 2 is the best book she's read ever or recently is Where the Crawdads Sing, and she cannot wait for the movie. I have not read that. It has now gone on my reading list. The third one is that her favorite duty station when she was an active duty military spouse was, believe it or not, 29 Palms. She just found something really special about that place. And I asked her why budgeting gets her excited, because she literally lights up when she's talking about these numbers. And she said, because I like money and I like to keep as much of it as I can. So without further ado, let me pop Sarah on and let's talk budget. Hi, Sarah.
Yes. Hi, Anna. As always, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on today. Our first conversation, we really talked about like the benefits that you keep or lose as military families, right? When you transition out. And now moving into budgeting, I'm like, it's such a natural progression of conversation. Like, oh, so this is what I have to be prepared for. And now how am I going to pay for all this stuff, right?
Exactly.
And it becomes seriously overwhelming at some point. It's a hard process to know everything you're supposed to do. So before we get started too far in, I do want to just pop this in and just say this is only the second out of 4 that Sarah and I are doing, 4 live streams we're doing. So today is budgeting after military retirement or transition. The next one on February 8th, we're going to talk about your TSP. What do you do with it? Where does it go? And then the last one on February 24th is all about SBP and life insurance, or SBP or life insurance, or if you do need both, or, all those kinds of questions that happen. So pop these into your calendar, and I'm going to drop a link into the comments right now that just kind of shares a landing page where if you pop your email in, I'm going to send you a direct link to the live stream, and I'm going to send you whatever toolkit that we have from the live stream today. So just a heads up, that's coming down. That's coming down. So, okay. So Sarah, what are we talking about today?
Budgeting. So we are talking all about budgeting, long-term budgeting now. And I guess first, can I do like a little recap? Last time we talked about how we needed to know and really understand three things: where we were going to live, the cost of living there and taxes, what we're going to lose and how much it's going to cost to replace it, and military versus civilian pay. So that's kind of a recap from last time. And that's now leading us into our next layer, which is budgeting, and talking quickly about credit. Isn't that exciting, Anna? Isn't credit exciting?
Yes. So, yeah. I mean, the first kind of question was, where do you start? And you responded with credit. And I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, but what are we looking for, I guess? Like what is it about credit? I mean, because money and finance and credit, it's a huge amount of stress for people.
It is. So what we want to look at is we want to look at first good debts versus bad debts, right? So that's what we're looking at. And we need to understand how much debt we have. So that's the first thing for, everyone out there to go and say, okay, where are my debts? And what type of debt is it? It sounds really basic, but when you sit down, it's a really important foundation to this budget. So good debts is something you can take away. You have something to show for it. You have a mortgage, you have a home, you have a car loan, you have a car. Bad debts, you have nothing to show for. So if you're not paying a credit card off at the end of every month, that's a credit card balance. That's a bad debt. That's something we've got to work on. So that's kind of where we start in the simplistic sense of it, is good versus bad, and understand where your debt is.
That's okay. So we have the good debt, we have the bad debt, and then how does this overall affect like what we were just talking about, which is that credit score, right? Like that next step forward.
The next step, yes. So your credit, it's made up of 5 things and at 5 different percentages. And I will be honest, most people don't know this. They just don't, because unless you're told it, how would you know? But your credit score is made up of these numbers: 5 things at 5 percentages. 35% of your credit is made up through payment history. So you pay a bill on time every time. How? With a good budget, you're going to increase your credit score. It can also negatively increase your credit score if you're not paying bills on time. 30% outstanding balance. How much debt have you taken out that's floating around out there? The length of credit history, I think we all were probably taught at some point, if you open a card at 18 and you keep it for 30 years, it's great for your credit. Well, I mean, it is, but only by 15% is what your credit's made up there. And then 10% is what new credit are you opening, if any. And then there's our types of credit again, right? 10% that type of credit. So what's that type of debt or that loan or that credit that you're taking? Is it a good debt or is it a bad debt for this credit? So.
Okay, so we've got the good debt, we've got the bad debt, and I love this percentage breakdown. What kinds of things are we looking at that's going to positively or negatively affect these scores then? Like,
right. Yeah. So when you talk about, just like I talked about, if you pay a bill on time every time, that's going to increase it. If you don't, then it's going to slowly start chipping away. I would say that's the number one thing. The number one takeaway is to be able to pay your bills on time, a credit bill on time every time, whether that's your mortgage, whatever loan, that's the number one thing. And how do we do that? A budget. Right? That comes to our budget. Here we are.
I was just going to ask you, that's so funny because really, literally the next banner question that I had for you is, how do we apply this information about credit and debt to a budget, right? Like it kind of flows right into that, like, what do we do with all this,
What
right?
do you do? So it flows in. And so this is our layering effect. You've got to walk before you run type of thing. So our budget, by understanding all of these things I've talked about and implementing them into this rule, a 50-30-20 rule. Okay. And so 50%, everyone can read this slide, but 50%, these are our needs, our house, our car, electricity. There's things we need to live. But I'm going to break that out further. And this is really important. So we're going to break it out further. 28% should be for housing cost. That is, say your mortgage, all in, principal, interest, insurance, everything, all in, should be no more than 28% of your housing cost. Now I'm going to throw another number. 36% is your total debt load. So your total debt load, no matter what, should not exceed 36%. So I'm not here to tell anyone what to spend their money on, just what percentages to allocate it in order to be on the path of being financially solid and foundationally successful for long-term years of retirement. We're talking 30 years down the road. We're going to stick to this.
So to dumb it down just a tiny bit, Sarah, when you say total debt load of 36%, what you're talking about is literally everything you're spending money on, or debt that's like big debt?
That's your big debt, right? Because your credit cards, your everyday living expenses, right? You should be having those everyday living expenses, and then at the end of the month, they should be paid off, right? That credit card should be paid off. We're talking about, say, so I love this kind of graphic, and I'm gonna use this right here. I'm gonna use some really cool index cards. So simple. So we have 28%, right, for our housing, and 36% needs to be our total debt load. So however you want to do that, your house should cost you no more than 28%. If you max that out and then you want to go buy a car, that leaves you only 8% in the middle that you should be spending on that loan. Now, maybe you want to manipulate that number a bit. You don't want to max out that 28% for your house. You say, you know what? I only want to spend 20% on my house. That gives me some more money to get some more good debts. We want it to good debts to hit our 36 so we don't go over this. So again, it's not about telling you how to spend it. It's just the percentages to allocate towards it. And if we stick within that, then we can come to our long-term growth in savings.
Okay, so one more like simplify it down question. When we're looking at the amount of money, are we looking at a percentage of our net or our gross profits as in terms of like income? Net or gross income?
Yeah. So we would all really love to use our gross income. I'm making all this money. Look at me go. Well, Uncle Sam, the government, they say something otherwise. So you want to look at that net. You want to see what is actually coming into your checking account, say at the end of every month or every 2 weeks. What is the actual amount of money that you're receiving? That's the number that you want to run off of.
Okay, so Michelle, she just answered your question. I didn't even see your question before I asked the question. So we're like thinking on the same wavelength right here.
Yes, yes.
All right, so that is super good. More, we're going to have these stats for you to put on your sheet, on your fridge. I'm going to post these on LinkedIn. And in fact, something even better than that, because when we started having these pre-conversations, we started talking about the different allocations. The next one that Sarah had come up with was this 30% entertainment. And I'm like, okay, so what is that entertainment that we're talking about? Like what falls under these different categories? She's kind of really defined that whole, like the 50%, right? I think you've done a really good job defining that, but what falls under entertainment? And then that last 20%, which I'm going to pull this back up again, your savings and debt repayment.
Sure. So 30%, these are our wants, right? These are not our basic needs. These are our wants, our entertainment, our travel, buying a new expensive purse, Netflix. Now, I will say, I personally think Netflix is a necessity. A CPA is going to tell you differently. So I put it in my 30% wants. These are all the things that I can truly actually live without, right? I need food, that's a need. I want a new purse, that's a want. So those are your want categories. And again, that's, it's 30%. So however you look at your budget of what money's coming in, however you want to allocate that, some people really like to go out to eat. Well, then put 15% of that 30% for dining out. People love to travel. However you want to break that up, just keep that 30%. Just keep that number in mind for our fun stuff, our wants.
Okay. And now let's take it to the next one, that 20% savings and debt repayment. Like,
Yep.
what comes first? You pay off the debt and then start saving? Are you supposed to split it in the middle? How do you figure this portion of it out?
So you're on the right track. We're going to split it in the middle. So just like we kind of broke out that 50%, we're going to break out this 20%. 20% savings, but 10%, no exception, is going to go to a retirement investment account, whether that's a TSP, a 401k, IRA, whatever option you have, 10% goes to that retirement account. Our other 10% is going to be additional savings to build an emergency fund and to repay our debts. And we want to start, of course, with any bad debts. I always think of, credit cards that aren't being paid on time. So that's that other 10%. Now, as you start building that emergency fund and you start repaying those debts, and this takes time also, Anna, let me just say, this doesn't happen in 1 month. This takes time. This might take a year. This might take 2 years, but this is for the long haul. So as you start building this additional 10% of savings for emergency funds and repaying debt, then, you can talk about extra savings, that next level.
Okay. So, and it really comes down to then, does it come down to like best practices in terms of, okay, you take your 10%, you said no exceptions, right? That goes into a savings account. So we have 10% more to play with. And in terms of like building your emergency fund versus paying your debt down, are these individual choices, or is there a best practice principle where you're dividing that in half, or you build your emergency fund first, then focus on debt, or something along those lines?
Yeah. So that's great. I think best practice would be to put a little bit into both. So put a little bit into emergency fund and pay off the debt, because the reason we say an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of true living expenses, actual living expenses, all in. And this is for a loss of job. This is for, maybe you're transitioning from the military and you didn't quite get a job lined up, fast enough. It takes on average, the average American, 3 to 6 months to find a job. This can be for your home repair or for, unexpected car problems. The point of this is so that you're not diving into your 50 and your 30, right? Or your 10 for your retirement. This is so that you have liquidity. So you're not having to dive into your everyday budget, your monthly budget, to pay for something extravagant in some way. So that's really important kind of in this process, which is why it's important to build this fund up at the same time that you're paying down the bad debts. There might be some people out there that say, best practice is pay that bad debt off as fast as you can. Well, let's take a look at it. Is it sitting at a low interest rate? Is it something we can do quickly? So that's where you have to look at your personal finances and figure out, okay, what can I sway here? Do I put 5% now towards an emergency fund and 5% towards my bad debt? Because what you don't want to do is not have that emergency fund, and then all of a sudden your budget gets blown up because you've got to make a $2,000 worth of repairs on a car. So it all plays in together.
So what she's saying is, if you want to be assured to have your Netflix from month to month, you have to have that emergency fund.
That's right.
Okay, so we do have a question that I want to pop up, Sarah. This is so if you have multiple retirement accounts, how are you dividing that 10%?
Great. Yeah. Great question. So one of the ways, so multiple retirement accounts, you can think of it as the first thing you want to do is if you are employed somewhere and you have an employee contribution for a 401k. If that employee contribution, if they have an employee contribution for your 401k, that's your first focus because that's free money, right? And we always want to take free money. So you want to, maybe the employee contribution is they'll match up to 5%. Well, then you definitely want to have at least 5% there, right? Because we're getting free money. And then from there, you can make that personal decision. You can work with a financial advisor to say, okay, what should I do with this other 5%? Should I put it into my 401k or should I put it into a separate Roth account that I'm saving? I love Roth accounts. They're wonderful. If you can contribute to them, max them out. So the goal is we want to max everything out, right? So you need to look at the type of accounts. A 401k, you're going to be able to max out at $19,500. An IRA, you're going to be able to max out at $6,000. So play with those numbers. Can you max out $6,000 in a Roth and also meet that matching contribution for your 401k and get that free money? Great. It all depends on your income and what you're able to do for that 10%.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a great answer, right? I mean, it really, and this is where it gets difficult, right? And this is where I want military families and military spouses specifically to remember that it really is an individualized plan for each of us. There is no like, yep, this is how you do it. And then you're set for life, right?
Right.
Because every family's finances, incomes, jobs, it's all so uniquely individualized.
But if we can stick kind of to these 50, 30, 20, you're going to be on that path. You're going to be on the right path. Because I get this question a lot. Well, what happens when I have my 3 to 6 months of emergency funds and I've paid down my credit card debt and I've paid this debt and I just have my mortgage, which is in my 50% allocation. Now I have this extra money. What am I going to do with this? And that leads us into that savings and retirement. That leads us into now we start building true wealth, right? For that next 30 years, for that really long haul.
I love those words. True wealth, not fake wealth, like actual real money in your account wealth.
Real money. I can really live off of this when I am 65 years old. And it goes back to, right? Well, what does it cost to live, right? I want Netflix. I don't want to cut my Netflix. I want it when I'm 65 too. Like,
right. That's when I have time to sit and binge watch all the shows, you know?
I want all the subscriptions. I want HBO. I want that. Well, this is our true wealth.
Right. That's great. Okay. So you've given us all these percentages, these numbers, these allocation suggestions. We've talked about it being individualized. And then I know that for today, what we have is a really awesome tool that you use with some of the people that you work with AFMA, and you're going to share it with our spouses today. So I wanted to pull up this budgeting spreadsheet that you've given me and just kind of like go through it really quick so people can see what it is. And then if you're watching right now and you want this budgeting spreadsheet, we're going to make it free available. I did pop a link into all the different places. I'm going to just throw one of them up here, but that bit.ly link right there is going to take you to a landing page. If you sign up, you're going to get it straight into your inbox. You don't even have to go searching for it, as well as a direct link to the next live stream that we have. So sign up for it, but let me pull up this budget right here. And then I'm going to make Sarah talk about it. I mean, do you guys see her lighting up as she talks about these numbers?
I
get so excited.
I do. I get so excited. And Anna, you make it so easy. I love how easy you make it for everyone to find this, and it's free and it's a resource. And here it is. So this budgeting spreadsheet, it's a bit maybe different and more detailed than you would normally see. And this is what we use when doing financial, plans. This is what we're using to give to people to say, start looking at where everything's going. You'll see we've got that rule at the top, 50, 30, 20. Let's always keep that in our mind. We have our breakdown of our 10%, right? What are we, where's that money going? And then every year, this is going to change. So this isn't going to stay stagnant because, our lives change. As well as hopefully as you start building that emergency fund, you now have some extra money and you're going, what do I do with this? But you'll see we get real detailed. I mean, we've got pet care, personal care, all of the things that we sometimes don't think about. And then, of course, we have those reminders of our total debt load, 36%, our total housing, 28%. So you can see this is a great way to start thinking about every subset of your budget. And your budget's going to look different. You're going to probably add, I know in mine, I have 5 or 6 more subsets. I've got my kids' sports in there, and I've got, other activities and things. So this is just a great way to really start thinking about breaking it down line item by line item. And it shows you our actual and then the projection. What next year can I see that maybe the projection's going to be? Maybe it's going to change, right? So it's looking ahead, because we're always looking ahead. We're talking about money. We're always looking ahead.
Yeah. And this is the important thing, right? This is the starting to train your mind to think longer term. I loved how detailed this was. I love that it breaks it down. There were things on here that I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about adding. That's an expense I forgot to put in my budget, that kind of a thing. And so I love that this is so detailed, and I love that it's a starting point. So you can tailor it. Like you said, adding your kids' sports or, some specialized something that you love to do, a hobby, money towards your hobby. Those, could be in a want or need category if your hobby is then ultimately going to become an entrepreneurial business, or, just starting to look at those projections. So one of the things I do want to point out is that when Sarah and I were looking through this, just so I understood it, because, I'm not a budget expert here, right? But when we were talking about this, she was talking about this section up top where it really is this, like, once you get that 10% emergency fund and debt payment done, now all that money, whatever that number might be, let's make it an easy 10,000, right? $10,000 that was going towards those things is now getting invested into things that you want to invest it into to build that what she calls that true wealth. That's exciting. Like, it does get you excited, right? Because you see the potential and the possibilities of where you could really build that solid foundation, because we know finances is like the massive stressor for families, the massive one.
Yeah.
So when you start to really look at these numbers, all of a sudden it becomes, in my world, it became very doable. Oh, I can do this. I can put these numbers together.
And that's what we want, and that's why I get so excited about it, because I want people to think just like that. This is doable. It's not overbearing. It's not too much. This is very doable. I've got kind of hard numbers to fit into, and I fit my budget within them. And if you stick to it, like you said, all of a sudden that extra 10%, well, you've built that emergency fund and you've paid off those debts. And now you're like, well, now I have more money. What am I going to do with this? More money to invest. So it becomes a reality. It becomes tangible that you can achieve this and achieve that true wealth. So it takes discipline though, right? That's what it takes. It takes discipline. And that's the hardest part, but.
Wait, great. There's more. We have to be disciplined.
How to be disciplined. I can tell you it, but if you don't do it, then, we got nowhere.
Well, and I'm going to say this too, like we talk, ultimately when you're looking at transition process, ideally you're looking at this process 3 to 5 years from before this transition happens, right? That's ideal. But if you've passed that mark, if you're like me, 8 months afterwards, it's not too late to start. It's not too late to start doing this process and making this budget plan. So don't feel like, oh, we delayed too long and now just forget Netflix forever, or whatever. I'm going to use Netflix as like that thing, right? Right.
It is.
But yeah, I just want to encourage you, like, to just continue to like push forward. We have 2 more questions that are coming. I'm going to throw these in really quick. 2 questions. Did you create the spreadsheet and do you have a similar one in numbers format? on the map?
Great question. So this spreadsheet actually came from our CPA, who does financial planning. This is the spreadsheet they use. So they're the masterminds behind it. I do personally use it. And then do I have one in numbers format? I will get one in numbers format. I'll figure that out. So we'll get one in numbers.
Yeah. So when she gets that one in numbers, then I will pass it on, or Sarah can pass it on. We'll make sure that it's made available, and we're working on that on the Spouse Link side. So I'll drop some links into both the LinkedIn, the Facebook, and the YouTube, where you can connect with Spouse Link and kind of just, again, get on that mailing list. And I posted that bit.ly link both in LinkedIn, and then I have it on YouTube, and I have it on the Facebook page. So if you are, just take a look through, scroll through there, and then I'll respond to comments afterwards that are directly asking for this specifically, because we want to make sure that this is super accessible to you, that you have it, and that it's really easy for you to access. I mean, this is the hard part, right? There's so many things going on. The last thing that we want to do is make you really work hard for all the things, because you're already working so hard. I know this. I did this 8 months ago, right? I know this. So, okay. Great questions. We are at the end of our live stream. Can you believe it? They fly by, don't they?
It just does.
It just does. So just to start to close out kind of what we discussed today, I want to remind everyone that our very next one is going to be Thursday, February 8th. And that's a date change. We originally had it scheduled for the 10th, but we had a little conflict occur. So we've moved it to Tuesday. I'm sorry. Look, this is even wrong. It's Tuesday, February 8th, not Thursday. So Tuesday, February 8th, and we're going to talk about your TSP. And this is part of that wealth building, because your TSP is an investment plan. But a lot of people don't know what to do with it once they leave active duty. You can't contribute to it anymore. So, but what do you do with it? Do you leave it? Do you change it? Do you move it? Do you divest it? What do you do, right? So Sarah's going to give us some of those answers, which I'm very excited about, because ours is still just sitting there, and we haven't made a decision yet. So we're looking for like that cool insight. And then last but not least, I want to make sure everyone has the direct information to connect with you. So Sarah, can you tell them how to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a message, if you have questions. My email's up there, sbumgardner@afma.com. And of course, our AFMA landing page, I'm there as well. So find me in any of those ways to get to me, especially if you have questions or things that you're just wanting to know more about.
Yeah. And right now I am dropping a link into the chat and onto the LinkedIn page. That is Sarah's survey. And what this basically does is it just helps her know that the information she's providing is something that you have found useful. And, maybe if there's something that maybe you think she needed to add to today's live stream, this is where you get to tell her about it. This is like
Tell me.
She wants to know, people. She wants to know.
I really do. Please. I would. Thank you so much, Anna, for dropping that. It's a jot form, and it's so easy. It'll take literally, I think, 30 to 45 seconds. But let me know your feedback, because I want this to resonate. I want this to make sense. I want to help. So give me your honest feedback. You're not going to hurt my feelings in any way, shape, or form. Tell me what I can do better.
Yeah, if you want to hurt her feelings, you're going to have to take away her Netflix. That's all there is to
it. That'll do it. That'll do it, Anna. That'll do it.
All right. So here's your action items today. Add the series to your calendar. February 8th and February 24th are our very next live streams. Fill out Sarah's jot form survey. Let her know how she did today. Add your email to our landing page. That's that bit.ly link that I dropped in. Connect with Sarah. Connect with me here on LinkedIn. We want to be your friends. We want to be there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. As always, the information is so useful. I mean, I threw up Moira's comment and she just really nailed it, right? It's so worth our time. It's just little bits and reminders, and whether we kind of knew it or didn't know it, it's just that like that nice comprehensive, yes, this is what the next step is. So I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love being here. I can't wait for February 8th when we dive into the TSP.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to seeing everybody in just a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, watch for some LinkedIn posts and those direct links to that Google spreadsheet, numbers spreadsheet. I think we also have an Excel format spreadsheet. So we've got a couple of different versions that are going to be coming out depending on what kind of programs you use in your for your computer. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.